Hello, everybody. Welcome. I have with me once again my co-host Joe, and
As always.
yeah, happy to have you here.
As you can probably tell, I got a haircut this week.
Oh yes, you look very good with that haircut. Old says hello, Joe.
Hello, Mr. Old Arrow.
So, in the past, we've talked about a lot of games. We've in the times when I was doing the talk show solo, we talk about World of Warcraft a lot. Joe ended up last time talking about Fallout New Vegas, and in the past we've talked about some other games, Destiny and Call of Duty Zombies and everything. Dark Souls is a bit of a different beast from all of those. I guess the closest to it would be something like Destiny, really World of Warcraft 2. Dark Souls 1 and especially Dark Souls 3 are some of my favorite games of all time. I also enjoy Dark Souls 2, but this is kind of going to be like a part 1, and I have no date when I'm going to do the part 2. But part 1 here, I'm going to talk about Dark Souls 1 and 3 entirely. I want to talk about Dark Souls 2 sometime because that game there's a lot to talk about with it. One of the biggest things being that it's a good game, but it's a bad Dark Souls game. So I would love to sort of explain why that is in the future. But for now, we'll go ahead and just talk about the sort of like good of Dark Souls 1 and 3. In my title here, I have how Dark Souls teaches patience, and that's kind of like the primary thing that I want to talk about. But I also just kind of want to nerd out about Dark Souls 1 and 3 because it's a really, really interesting series. And I will say I never played Demon Souls, I never played Bloodborne, but I know both of those games, especially Bloodborne, are like, people say they're really good, and like a lot of people will say Bloodborne is their favorite of the Souls-like, which ended up becoming Soulsborne, and then when people include Sekiro, it became Soulsborne Kiro. Now when Elden Ring comes out, it's going to be Soulsborne Kiro Ring. It's getting a little much, but
sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
Oh yeah, no problem. So I'm looking forward to when Elden Ring comes out. I think that's going to be a really good time. And like everything I've seen from it looks like it's very much like Dark Souls 3, but like with a lot of refinements and like the ability to jump and everything. So whenever, that's like, I think February or something. Yeah, who knows? Probably just, that's a good point. It's probably just going to be From Games because that's a lot less of a mouthful. So whenever Elden Ring comes out, we'll be streaming that, I'm sure, and then also probably talking about it at some point on the podcast talk show here, because it's going to be another Dark Souls, just in a new universe and a new movement.
Oh, I do have to just, as an aside, I had never heard of Elden Ring until today. I was at GameStop. And I saw an ad for it. I'm like, what is this game? Oh, this looks like Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's so funny story about Elden Ring. That game has been like, it was announced, I think, like 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been in development by none other, like with story by none other than George R.R. Martin, the writer of Game of Thrones, or at least of the books. And so one of the funny things is that the last book for Game of Thrones has been due for like 20 years now. And I mean, everyone knows George R.R. Martin is just a very, very slow writer. Even in the books that he has released, they take forever to get through. They're good, like really well written, but he takes his sweet time. And at this point, I don't think he wants to release his last book because he knows there's a lot to live up to and he doesn't know if it can. So we'll see if it ends up being able to actually do that. But
so instead he was working on Elden Ring.
Yeah, so instead he was working on Elden Ring, except it turns out he was also taking his sweet time with Elden Ring because this game has been being worked on for a very long time and had been announced way long ago, and then they never announced a release date. So finally it's coming out. It'll be the Mass Effect 3 of books when it drops. Yeah, we'll see. It's pretty hyped for, so hopefully it ends up like living up to at least some of the hype, but I think it's gonna be tough. So Elden Ring is coming eventually. The dragons are coming and they're gonna be great. So we'll see what happens there. But since that's still not coming out until late February, that means we have plenty of time to talk about Dark Souls and still exist with Dark Souls being the only Souls series in existence so far. So one of the big things about Dark Souls 1, now I have to specify before I start again, Joe, you haven't played any of the Souls games other than a little bit of Dark Souls 1, right?
Correct.
So I believe like the most experience you had, yeah, the most experience you had was at that New Year's party a few years ago.
I do believe, yeah.
So, and you ended up getting pretty far, if I remember correctly. Like you got all the way to the Gargoyles, but
don't know what you're talking about.
So Joe doesn't know Dark Souls or Dark Souls 3. You see some speedruns of Dark Souls 1. It's a fascinating game to watch speedruns, especially Dark Souls 1, because that game is like held together by twigs and needles. It is like such a broken mess, and the fact that you can get all the way to Gwyn in like 20 minutes is ridiculous, using all sorts of glitches, all bunch of sequence breaks you can do. One of my favorite sequence breaks in Dark Souls 1 is actually, there's this area called the Painted World of Ariandel. And in it, there's like this really big bridge, and this bridge, it's like a super long bridge, and it leads all the way to the boss of the area. Or sorry, actually, I think it's the Painted World of Ariamis. I think Ariandel is Dark Souls 3. But it's this really long bridge, and at the very end of it is the boss in like its own sort of room. But then there's also a second level of the bridge, like above it, that goes about halfway, and then it's like broken, and so like you could theoretically fall down onto the rest of the bridge. Except, so like the issue is that there's a dragon, like an undead dragon, hanging out at the edge of the bridge, and this dragon is like he lies dormant there until you get close, and then the front half of his body wakes up and starts climbing across the bridge and attacks you, whereas the back half of his body stays on the other end of the bridge. And so you can't get past that, the dragon butt is what everyone calls it, because it's just the back half of the dragon. Until someone realized if you attack that dragon with a jumping attack, which is where you like do a heavy attack while like flicking the control stick forward. You'll do like a leaping punch. If you like have just your fists out, you'll do a leaping punch. And for whatever reason, that causes the dragon butt to just stand up spontaneously. Like it just stands on its two legs. And so you can go in between its legs and just fall down onto the other level of the bridge, and you skip like 80% of the entire zone because you just make your way to the boss right then and there. It's bizarre. The game is so broken.
You're telling me that wasn't intended.
It almost feels like it was because of how ridiculous the whole thing is. It makes me think that may have been like a developer debug thing, that they were like, oh, I want to test this quickly, so let's do this, and then they forgot to take it out, which honestly would be just as plausible as it being just a straight up bug. So the Dark Souls 1 has this area towards the end of the game where it's just this gigantic like open wasteland, and they just copy pasted like 40 of a boss that you fought earlier, but since you're a higher level now, it's not as difficult as the boss fight, but they're still difficult, and there's just like 40 of them in an area, and it's like, why? Why is that a thing? Anyways, so moving on then to Dark Souls 1, talking about the game itself. So my title today is talking about how Dark Souls teaches patience, but I do want to just talk about Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 like the main thing that I want to talk about with them is the bosses, because that's the highlight of any Souls games, are the bosses. The zones are pretty cool, but after you've played the games a few times, you basically end up just sprinting through each zone like every time, just trying to avoid getting in combat with anything, or trying to avoid having to fight anything, which can be kind of fun sometimes, but also for the most part just makes it feel tedious, because you're like, okay, I'm just doing all this to get to the boss. But even that in itself teaches you a little bit of patience, especially when you're fighting mobs in between zones, when you're actually playing them as they're intended instead of just sprinting through. The way that those zones teach patience is that you can't just like fight everything at once. You know, it's not like a World of Warcraft where you can pull everything and then pop a bunch of cooldowns and AoE them down. It's not like a like Destiny or Fallout where you can aggro everything and then kind of hide and like use some sort of clever mechanics to pick them off one by one. In the Souls series, you do not get that opportunity to like hide and pick everything off. A lot of times enemies will keep chasing you until you kill them or you die, or until you reset them at the bonfire, or even if they don't, you'll still end up like having them chase you for a really long time. There's a lot of enemies that are placed kind of around each other, and if you just decide to go running out into the middle of them and fighting them, you're just gonna get destroyed. Even if you have the most poise in the world, like they'll sit there staggering you for all eternity, and then you'll just slowly bleed to death. So even in that regard, Dark Souls teaches patience pretty well, because it forces you to really take your time and do things a bit slower, which is, I mean, that's one of the reasons why you end up sprinting through stuff most often when you've played it a bunch of times, because it's like, okay, I've seen this before. I've already gotten the patience to make it through. I don't care about the rest anymore. So, you know, and unfortunately, some of the Souls games are worse for that than others. One big thing, and this is actually, it's really big in Dark Souls 3, but it's pretty bad in Dark Souls 1, or sorry, it's really big in Dark Souls 2, but it's kind of bad in Dark Souls 1 and 3 as well, is the runs to bosses. A lot of times in Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3, when you die to a boss, it will take you like 2 to 3 minutes to get back to the boss, not including respawn times. And in cases like Dark Souls 2, sometimes it'll take like 5-10 minutes and you might not even make it to the boss, because the run up to the boss is harder than the boss fight itself, which is great. But so a lot of times you'll be very patient during the boss fight, because you know that if you make that mistake, if you decide to do some series of things that'll cause you to die, well, then you need to make that whole run up again, and no one wants to do that. So I think like some of the ones I think about primarily with that are the Dragon Slayer armor and the Twin Princes in Dark Souls 3. Those bosses have like 3 elevators you have to go up in order to get to, and the elevators just are a slow crawl. Or I mean, in Dark Souls 2, like the best example of this is the Lud and Zalin. You literally takes 15 minutes to get to them again, and the boss fight itself is really difficult. The run-up is exceedingly difficult. A lot of times people will summon 3 NPCs just to be like meat bags, to block all the enemies. So there's...
Throw a monkey bomb.
Yeah, pretty much just throw the monkey bombs. That's what they end up being, is monkey bombs. So a lot of times you end up having just a ton of patience, and the boss fights will take a while because of that. But again, we're not talking as much about Dark Souls 2. I want to talk about Dark Souls 1 and 3 primarily, because those are like the ones I remember fondly. Dark Souls 2, I don't remember a whole lot of it fondly. And I shouldn't even say don't remember. Like, I've played it recently, like within the last 3 months, I think I played it. And it was literally my one playthrough, and I couldn't even finish it because I was just like, this is just awful. This is really not fun. Anyway, so that's something that we'll be talking about, Dark Souls 2 and where it kind of failed and what sort of issues it has at some point. But for now, we'll talk about, let's go ahead and start with Dark Souls 1. So Dark Souls 1, one of my favorite things that it does, one of the reasons why I believe it's such a fantastic game, as well as Dark Souls 3, is the escalation of difficulty. And that's very much what we're going to focus on with talking about these two games, the escalation of difficulty and the bosses themselves. In Dark Souls 1, the escalation of difficulty is pretty linear until you get to the halfway point, and then it drops down until you get to the DLC, and then it like goes way up. But you have your first boss, which is the Asylum Demon, and the Asylum Demon is one of the most well-known bosses from Dark Souls. It's the first one that you fight. It's the big tubby green guy with the big hammer, and you a lot of people will try and fight him at the start and not be able to do it, and it's because the game gives you a broken straight sword, which you can do 2 damage with. You're supposed to go running past him into this little side area, and then you come back later on when you actually have weapons. For people who play a lot of Dark Souls, the Asylum Demon is a ridiculously easy boss. But for people who haven't played Dark Souls, it's like the perfect difficulty for a starter boss. It's got very generous hitboxes. It's a very big target, and it moves slow. So it's something that you can take a really long time to fight. I mean, people will do fist only and take forever and still be fine. It's like not a super difficult boss fight, but it can be punishing if you are not patient. If you try and just sit there and just spam attack it, then you're gonna die. But if you sit back and look for, okay, what move is he doing? Oh, he's doing an overhead swing. Okay, so I can dodge to the left or the right and avoid it. That sort of stuff. So then the next boss, usually the next boss that people will fight is the Taurus Demon. And this one raises the stakes a little bit more because now you're on a bridge, a really thin bridge, and this guy attacks a lot faster. He doesn't really stagger very easily. He jumps around a lot. He's very, very mobile. But he also still is like this very giant target, and he still misses a bit. So, it's still not too difficult. You can actually make him fall off the bridge. You can also do like a plunging attack on him if you climb up a ladder. Or you can even stay up the ladder and have him jump up to you and fight him there in like a much wider circular arena. So then later on you have the Gargoyles. This is like the first sort of actually hard boss, because you fight this gargoyle that has very wide sweeping attacks. It's very mobile, jumps back a lot. It has a fire breath, and it has a lot of varying hitboxes, as well as being a bit smaller. And then when you get halfway, it actually calls in its friend, and you have 2 gargoyles, and so it turns into a completely different fight, because now you're having to balance the 2 of them. You have to wait for the right moment to attack, and this is where the patience factor for Dark Souls becomes really apparent. When you're fighting the twin gargoyles and you have the 2 of them down, if you run in at a time when it's not safe to attack, you're probably not even going to get the attack off. They're probably going to stagger you, but even if you do, you're going to end up getting comboed and killed. And then you have to do the whole run back and start the fight from scratch. And in some cases, if you used consumables like the lightning weapon thing, whatever it's called, I don't know, because I don't really use those too often. But if you do use one of those, then you basically just wasted that. And so there have been times where I fought the twin gargoyles, and I've been running around for 2 minutes just waiting for the right moment to attack. And there probably were some moments to attack during that time, but you got to be very careful when you're doing the fight. So, and then you later on have Quelaag, who is more slightly more difficult just because she has a lot of health, and she has a lot of varying attacks, as well as an AoE attack, which no bosses have had yet, other than Moonlight Butterfly, I guess. But we won't even talk about that because it's barely even a boss. But you have Quelaag, who has this AoE attack. She has a bunch of frontal cone attacks, and just does a lot of damage, as well as a pretty nasty area to run up to where you'll probably get poisoned. Blighttown itself is a really good sort of patience thing, because if you decide to take it really fast, you're probably going to fall off the ledge and die. So you really gotta take it slow and pay attention to the area around you and look around a bit. There are still other bosses along the way, although the Iron Golem is a very easy boss. So Sen's Fortress itself, you kind of have to be very patient for, because there's a ton of traps, and if you try and just sprint through the whole time, you're gonna get knocked off and die, and a lot of very difficult enemies. So you have to be a bit patient there. But the pinnacle, I think, for patience is Ornstein and Smo. So Ornstein and Smo is the other most well-known boss in this game. Other than, I guess, Sif is also a pretty well-known one. That's the dog with the sword in its mouth. But Ornstein and Smo is, I think, my favorite boss in the game, and it's most people's favorite boss. And it's because it is like the perfect example of how you have to be patient. We're gonna get into that in a moment, but I just want to say, like, just going into the rest of the bosses, the rest of them are quite easy compared to ONS. Some of them are still kind of tough, like Nido is kind of tough. I hate Bed of Chaos. I die on that one all the time, but it's hard for the wrong reasons, because it's forcing you to do platforming in a game that is not at all built around doing platforming. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. The only time when it really gets hard again is the DLC, and Artorias, Manus, and Calamy are all very difficult in their own ways. Artorias and Calamy in particular, they are ones that if you try and brute force it, you're going to get slammed. You have to really know what the attacks are, especially Artorias. That's one of those fights where if you know the attacks, it's like it's a really cool, really satisfying fight. It's like you fighting against this honorable knight, which lore-wise makes sense, and you guys are just like taking turns doing your attacks. Except for when Artorias does his triple slam attack and you just get stun locked and like die. That's not fun. So and then yeah, like Calamy is also just kind of tough, just because he's a very big target, but he's got a lot of very fast and wide attacks, and just a lot of health. So anyway, so let's go ahead and get into a lot of the bosses. Sorry, we already got into the bosses. Let's get into some specific bosses, some highlights for 3 of them: Ornstein and Smo, Manus, and Gwyn. So Joe, out of it, how do any of those names sound familiar? Also, hey Thorn, how's it going?
I have heard of Ornstein and someone else.
Nice.
I've heard that killing one gives powers to the other.
Yeah.
The only thing that I can think of when I think of that is the dual boss fight in Destiny 2, where you got those 2 Cabal guys running around.
It is very much like that fight.
That's basically all I have. The only idea I have of that.
Yeah. So imagine there's 2 Cabal guys. So yeah, so Ornstein and Smo is what I would say is pretty much the pinnacle of Dark Souls 2, or Dark Souls' game design, boss design. It's super good. Ornstein and Smo is set up where you have 2 bosses that you fight at the same time. One of them is a very, very, very large, slow-moving guy who can move fast in bursts, but for the most part, he kind of waddles. He has this huge hammer, and the hammer is really dangerous, and he does like big slam attacks. It's got a huge range, very, very big target. Then you have that one is Smo as the big target, and then you have Ornstein, who is the Dragon Slayer guy. He's got this like lion head armor, and he's a lot smaller. He's like a normal human size, and he goes running around pretty fast. He's got this spear. He can like shoot lightning projectiles at you, and he's not super dangerous, but he can be dangerous, and he moves around a lot. Whenever you kill one of them, the other one ends up getting buffed. They get back to full health, and then they do new attacks. Whether if it's Smo, he gets all sorts of lightning attacks, still no projectiles, but he attacks a bit faster and has a few new attacks, as well as a really big AoE attack. And if you kill Smo first, then Ornstein gets buffed, where he becomes giant, and now he attacks slower, but still has like quite a bit of range, and has some grab attacks and is quite dangerous. So the interesting thing, though, the way that they are designed is that you have one of them as the fast one and the other one is the slow one, but the slow one isn't too slow and the fast one isn't too fast. The boss fight itself is like, it's very chaotic at the start, but the way that it works is that, like, during phase 1, you cannot attack unless it is absolutely safe. So a lot of times you'll be running around the arena for like 2 minutes just waiting for them to separate, and then they finally do, and you get an attack or two, and then you got to run around a bunch again. You usually will end up fighting Orenstein first because he's the fastest one. If you went for Smo first, then you would like always have to deal with the two of them. But if you go for Ornstein first, you can most often deal with just one at a time, but you still have to run around a lot. A shield is super useful for this, but it's again, the key word is patience. You really have to take it slow and careful, because if you try and sprint through it, then you just end up getting flattened right away. So it's a very, very difficult fight that you have to take it very slow for. You have to wait for the right moment to attack, and it's a really cool dynamic that they have. Code Vein is a game that I like a lot. I enjoy it quite a bit, and I played it a whole lot. I've got like 200 to 300 hours in it. They have their own Ornstein and Smo, which is quite a difficult boss fight. You end up fighting against I don't remember what they're called. It's like a flame guy and a frost girl, and it's the same thing where the one's fast and the one's slow. The slow one is a super huge target. The fast one is a smaller target. The only problem is that they both have projectiles, and it's a much smaller arena, so it's pretty difficult. And like playing that solo is a nightmare, but it's still possible, obviously, and it's possible to do it without getting hit. It's just a bit rough. Gunfire Reborn, interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard of that one, but that sounds pretty awesome so far. So Ornstein and Smo took me at least 30 attempts to kill, and you know, granted, the hardest part about that, the run up to Ornstein and Smo was at least like 2 minutes long. So the fact that you have this super long run up and you have this really difficult boss fight that can take like 5-10 minutes, and sometimes you die at the last minute because you just ran out of heals because it's like an endurance fight, can be really frustrating. But Ornstein and Smo is not. It's a very satisfying fight, and that's kind of the big thing about this teaching patience that is like really, really, really important, is that you end up like, you really have to take it slow, but because you really have to like be careful about it, you really learn, like you really end up learning to be more careful and to take it slow, and that ends up leading to this like really satisfying feeling when you beat the boss and you're like, I worked really hard at this and now I finally accomplished it. Do you think Dark Souls teaches you to Google instead of figuring it out yourself? I would say no. You can, but I would. So you can like figure out a lot of the stuff by Googling it. And I mean, one of the biggest things, the first time I played Dark Souls 1, I did not Google a single thing other than how to get to the DLC, which is abysmally difficult to figure out on your own. It's stupid. I don't know why they made it so difficult to figure out, but the Dark Souls 1, I beat the entire game without ever looking anything up other than, again, the DLC, like how to get to the DLC. And so I don't think it's necessary at all to have to Google it in order to figure it out. However, it definitely does make it easier. The thing is that takes away one of the primary difficulties of the Dark Souls series, is the learning it yourself and the like having to like being in this sort of helpless situation where it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do? I have no idea where to go. But the game gives you hints here and there. Like in Dark Souls, the Capra Demon, which gives you the key in order to go into the depths, all of that is unnecessary if you have the master key, but if you don't, then you have to figure that out yourself. However, you end up earlier in the game when you're working on fighting the gargoyles, you'll discover the basement key, and you'll have seen this door that's locked that you can't get to. And so you try the basement key, and it's like, oh, okay, this basement key takes me down there. In order to get to the basement key, you end up having to go to the gargoyles, which is basically just, you go to just whatever open area there is, and you're like, okay, let's just go this way, and you keep going through, and eventually you find the gargoyles, and you find this key. So the game really emphasizes exploration. Sometimes you'll go the wrong way, and you'll hit a dead end, and then be like, okay, well, that's not the way to go. But it does a good job of not hiding everything. It's a much bigger issue in Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2, I think, is like, there are so many areas where I still have to use a guide in order to figure out, because it's impossible. But Dark Souls 1, I think you don't need to do that as much. In Dark Souls 3 especially, you don't need to. That game's very linear. But especially, like, the highlight to me for all of the Souls games are the bosses. And the bosses, you don't want to Google them, because there's like nothing you can gain from doing that.
You can't Google for skill at timing things, can you?
Yeah, exactly. It's a little difficult to figure out how bosses work. So I mean, you can like watch a YouTube video on them, but even that's not going to learn as well. Yeah, when Dark Souls came out, I had to compete against Cataclysm. That's the thing. For a lot of those of us that play World of Warcraft, Dark Souls never got played until many years later. But I mean, I didn't play it until 2018. I played Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 in 2018, at the very end of 2018, actually, when Battle for Azeroth from World of Warcraft really fell apart, and there was also all the guild drama.
Yeah, so, I really didn't play Dark Souls 1 until 2022.
Nice. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's well, I mean, it's interesting because I think Dark Souls as well is like, it's one of those games that's very much a it's a particular type of person likes to play Dark Souls, you know. So like for you, I think you would enjoy a lot of Dark Souls, but I think I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain how it's kind of a different experience. Like, different people will play it in a different way. So like, I think probably because it's like, it very much ends up being a like, sit down and like, while not even playing, just sit down and think about like, what in the world is going on in this boss and how do I fight it. Like one of those games where like just kind of going up against it a bunch of times is going to end up leading to failure, because sometimes a lot of the things are like so mechanical. I've been playing Hades lately. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I gotta check that game out. I've heard a few people recommend it, but it seems like it's like an isometric Dark Souls almost. Yeah, maybe old. Do you think any of the developers at Blizzard played Dark Souls instead of working on the game while making the female intern work on it instead? Yeah, that would make a lot of things make sense, if that's what happened. So Manus is another boss from Dark Souls that I like a lot. It's an endurance fight. It's a super long run up, and it's only one target, but all of his attacks are like combos that you can learn. You need to figure out what the pre-animations are and the wind-ups, and then you can know exactly how to dodge. And there's always a particular direction. You can dodge multiple directions for them, but there's a particular direction that if you dodge, that's what will like keep you safe. It's super punishing if you fail to dodge. Like, even when you're down to the last like 10%, if you don't dodge his like shotgun blast attack, where he like shoots a like shadow blast at you, you almost always, even at a really high level, you'll get one shot and die, which is frustrating. But like, when you know the fight, when you're really paying attention, like, you can't just decide, okay, I'm just gonna sit here and attack. The amount of times I have seen videos of people where it's like, oh, the boss was at 1% health, and so I just started swinging, and then they die, and it's like, they post it on Reddit, and they're like, oh, I can't believe it, I got killed at 1% on this boss, this has never happened. And then everyone in the comments is like, yep, you got greedy. That's
but obviously when you make a boss fight, you're supposed to make their attacks slow down as their health goes down.
That's right. Yeah, it has to be a proportional thing. Boss gets to 1%, and they're just like, swing. Gwyn is the final boss of the game. He's like the main final boss, and he's a good example of needing to be very patient, where you need to get the parries. If you don't get the parries, the boss fight is really tough. But like you need to sit and learn all of the attacks in order to know the parry timings, because parry timings require, like, I think you have like 6 frames in order to get a parry, which is crazy. And 6 frames at a 60 FPS game. And so if you don't get that, then you're going to end up missing the parry, and then you're just going to take all this extra damage. And but when you know the attacks, it's actually really easy to do the parries, because you only got like 6 different attacks. And so you just take the time to learn all of them, and suddenly the fight is like really easy. But it's very, very satisfying, because you need to sit down and think about, like, okay, he's doing this attack. Let's try parrying at this moment. No, that didn't work. Okay, let's next time I see him doing that, let's try at a different time. And like, oh, that did work. So that's how you do it. And so you need to have the patience to sit back and think about, like, how do I actually fight this boss?
And what I'm thinking is, you said 6 frames, so if I unplug my graphics card, I'll be better at the game.
Yes, that's right. Everything going in slow motion, no problem. So it's also got a very long run up. But one of the other cool things about it, and this is something that happens a lot in all of the games, it happens a ton in Dark Souls 3 actually. And it's really satisfying when you know how to do it. I love doing it, and it's one of the reasons why I like some of the later bosses. Thank you for the sub, Mr. Oldero. Dor. You remember you have a sub thing? I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for the Prime sub. That is very kind of you. There's like some of the bosses in Dark Souls 3 that you can bait the AI into doing certain attacks. You can do this on Gwyn too. If you use a consumable, then he tries to punish with a certain attack. And so you can, most of the time, he'll do a punish with it. So you can bait him into doing that and then get a very easy parry. So if you have a bunch of Estus flasks and you don't need them, just drink an Estus flask, and then he'll be like, oh, I have to attack with this other thing. And then you can just get your parry. And like, he's like, oh, who would have thought that would happen? And then you just do that every single time. So the big thing about Dark Souls 1, and this still exists in Dark Souls 3, but less so, bosses can be a one-shot. Like you can get them on your first try, or you can take like 50 tries. But the important thing is that you need to be patient and wait for the right moments to do counterattacks. You can't just brute force push your way through. In this sense, it's very difficult, or very different from a game like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy. It's very different from even a game like Destiny, where you basically just attack the boss like all the time. Granted, some of the raids from Destiny are a bit more complicated. It's very different from like a Terraria, where you are constantly attacking and dodging. It's like in this game, you very rarely actually attack, even if you have fast weapons. I mean, the fist only fight against some of the bosses from Dark Souls 3, even when it's an easier boss, can take like up to 10-15 minutes. And it's because they're not able to just sit there and just keep punching forever and ever. They have to really take it slow, because even with the fists, they still can only get 1 or 2 attacks in at a time. So, you know, it's fun. Dark Souls 3 is... Oh, sorry, go on.
Hearing that, I'm like, a successful run of a boss is 15 minutes, so how long are you expecting to take on a Dark Souls 3 fist-only run?
On a Dark Souls 3 fist-only run, if you could kill every boss in one shot, it would be about 10 hours. But considering that's not going to happen, and that already hasn't happened for my run, probably closer to 20 to 30 hours. Hopefully not that long, but like the later bosses are really, really tough. So I'd say probably like 20 hours would be a good estimate, as long as you actually like are familiar with the game and the bosses and everything. If
not too long.
yeah, it's like it's something that it'll take you a few days, or if you're streaming it, you know, like a few weeks maybe. But it also, again, like, and it's something that you'll see throughout all of my FIS only playthrough, is that in Dark Souls 3 especially, because that's the one I'm playing the FIS only, you really have to take it slow, and take it patient. The music that's playing right now is for the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, and the Dancer is one of the most fascinating bosses in the game, because all of the attacks are like super fluid. The boss is like all wriggly and everything the entire time. You sometimes don't even know when an attack comes, although when you've played it enough, you'll be able to see the animation of an attack starting. It's like a little bit of like a jump in animation. You're like, oh, something's happening. But it's such a fascinating boss, because you are almost at any moment you are in danger. Like, the boss is always going to be able to do some sort of attack, but sometimes they'll just keep walking, and so you might be like, oh, okay, I'll wait until I see them just walking for a while. But by the time you see them just walking for a while, they might decide to attack you. So it truly is like you just have to constantly wait till the end of an attack and then pop something in, like one hit, and then run away again, and keep doing that for the whole fight. So it's a fascinating fight. It's really fun. There was something else that one of my viewers had brought up when I was doing the fight, is the music is specifically designed in such a way that it is slightly desynced from how the dancer itself moves. And so you're wanting to kind of like move with the music, and like subconsciously you're thinking, oh, my dodge has to go with this song, because it's close to the music. The movements that you have to make, it's really close, but it's not quite there, and so it causes you to subconsciously tell yourself, now is when I dodge, and so then you dodge, and then you actually dodged at the wrong time, and so then you get hit by a combo and you die. It's just really crazy to think about.
Me playing with the audio muted pro gamer move.
Yeah, that's the real strategy. So, speaking of Dancer and Dark Souls 3, we'll go ahead and get into the bosses for Dark Souls 3. Eodex Gundyr is the first boss. This boss is one that is considered ridiculously easy for veterans and ridiculously hard for new players. I remember on my first time playing this, I had only played Dark Souls 1 the one time, and then I started playing this. My first time of Eodex Gundyr took me like 10 attempts, because it is a crazy boss if you don't know how Dark Souls, like if you're not super familiar with it. The big strategy for the boss is basically just circle around him, just keep moving around, and then he can't hit you, and then like do some dodges here and there. But like, it's a crazy fight, and a really fun one too. I really enjoy the fight, especially the phase 2 where he becomes like this giant abomination and everything. It's very fun, but again, like a tough fight that you really have to sort of think about, like, okay, what way do I actually dodge for these attacks? The first time the game actually gets difficult with his bosses, though, is the Abyss Watchers, and that's the like first sort of end boss, the first Lord of Cinder that you fight. The first phase is very chaotic, very fast-paced. You have, you're fighting just the one Abyss Watcher, and then a second one comes up and is attacking you, and then a third one comes up and starts attacking his friends, and so then you kind of do like here and there one-on-one, and then other times just like fighting the whole group. But the boss can be backstabbed, it can be staggered with certain attacks and everything, but it's also very fast-paced, and so you have to like really take it slow, take it careful. Only punish whenever you know you can, and if you sit there just spam attacking, the boss eventually gets sort of an immunity to stagger and will punish you, and when it attacks really fast and does like long combos, if you get punished, you can get killed in just the one punish. Phase 2 is just more of a one-on-one, but the boss has way more range and everything. Again, all of its attacks are combos, and it actually only has like six combos, but sometimes it will only do half a combo. Sometimes it'll delay its attacks in the combo. So like you really have to be patient, because you can't just like see like, oh, he did his first attack, I'm gonna real quick run in there and do another thing, because then he might continue his combo. So you oftentimes have to wait until the end of a combo or look for the punishable combos, because you can get backstabs, and there are certain combos that when he does them, you know, if you circle around a certain way and dodge a certain way, you will be able to get the punish and get the backstab. So Pontiff Sullivan is one of the later bosses, and this boss is what I would consider to new players, I would consider Pontiff Sullivan one of the hardest boss fights in the game. All of the game, including DLC. And it's because you have to do parries. If you do a bunch of summons, then it's really not hard. But that's the same goes for most any fight. Pontiff Sullivan, if you don't get the parries, the fight takes forever, and like he does combos that last like 15 attacks in a row, and he also delays them, and so if you don't get the parries, he's just gonna keep going, and you're just like dodging for your life, like crying because like, you know, tears streaming down your face because you're like, I can't play the game. And it's like you have to really think about all of his moves and be like, how do I punish this? What do I do to fight back against this craziness that's happening?
I like the picture you're painted.
Yeah. Just sitting there, just, I can't beat it.
My keyboard's all wet.
Yeah, you have to get a new keyboard because you're ruining the mechanics of your keyboard by just tears streaming into it. You also can only parry certain moves too. So that's, again, where you really need to sit back and think about, like, what do I do? How do I fight this boss? And it's got a pretty short run back, so it's really not difficult to get back to, which helps because you will die a lot. So it's a very fun fight. Champion Gundyr is another one that's very similar, where you have to learn the parries in order to do it. Like, if you don't do the parries, then the boss fight is just like, he's just so fast, but every single thing he does can be parried, other than his like punches, and like he does like a shoulder attack, you know, he does a body check. If you don't do that fight with parries, I've never been able to successfully do that fight without doing parries, other than doing summons. It is crazy. It is a crazy fight because he's just attacking so fast, and he has unlimited stamina. He will never like stop attacking, so you have to be getting those parries or running for your life. Dragon Slayer Armor is another later boss. It's actually a pretty easy boss, but I thought to highlight it because this boss has, like, he hides behind his shield a lot, and he uses huge attacks, like very wide sweeping. You can get knocked off the level if you do. During phase 2, sometimes you'll be getting attacked by the floating meatballs or lasers or anything.
Suddenly in the middle of Dark Souls 3, you're playing Call of Duty Black Ops 3. Yeah, you're playing Shadows of Evil, get the rolling meatballs. Yeah, it's a weird fight, but like, I really like the fight because it's another one of those fights where you go in and you get 1 or 2 attacks, and the boss doesn't have too much health. So you go in, you get 1 or 2 attacks, and then you kind of dodge around for a while, and you wait for the opening for him to put his shield down and to get his weapon ready, and then you can do an attack or 2. You can't just sit there attacking, otherwise you'll get flung off the level, or you'll get chain staggered and stunned, locked, and get murdered by the flying meatballs and the lasers and all of those. Nameless King is like the biggest example in all of this game of the you cannot attack more than once ever, like in a row, otherwise you will die. Specifically in phase 2, the boss, he attacks very fast and has ridiculous hitboxes. And no matter what weapons I use, even when I've tried to do this fight fist only, if you go for more than 1 attack per combo, you will die. Like, he will hit you with a 2-hit combo and kill you with that. And it's happened so many times now where I've been on the first phase for an actual 10 minutes, and then I get to the second phase and then I die because
I was just a little too greedy. So it takes forever. The fight takes a really long time, but it's really, really satisfying during the phase 2 when you're like, you're waiting for every single attack, and you know, okay, this is the attack where I dodge to the right. This is the attack where I dodge back. This is the one where I dodge into him. This one I don't even have to dodge. I just have to circle around him. So, and like, there's a lot of other really good bosses in the game. Sister Freed is a really long fight, and that's one where you have to learn, there's like 50 attacks that you got to learn. But when you do learn them, they all have a way to dodge and to deal with them. The Soul of Cinder, the main final boss of the game, is also pretty satisfying, where you like, you really have to, like, especially during the phase 2, he's only got a few attacks. A lot of them are very similar to Gwyn, but you can't parry. And you end up just needing to like take a step back and only go in for like 1 or 2 attacks at a time. He does like his big swing combo that if you stay in melee range, you will guaranteed to be hit by it. You can't even dodge through it either. Like, you have to get away from it. But to me, the most satisfying boss in the game, also my favorite boss in all of video games, like I would say this is literally my favorite boss that's ever existed in any game, is Dark Eater Midir, the dragon boss of the Ringed City DLC. This boss took me at least 20 to 30 attempts to beat my first time, and the fight itself can take like 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. So I mean, it was like a few hours to beat him. The music is like a waltz, and when you're doing the fight itself, it feels like a waltz. Like, it really feels like you're doing a nice waltz with the dragon. You're like, kind of, okay, there he's doing his attacks, now I do mine, now he does his, and you kind of take turns. He does one attack, like he leads with an attack where it's like, okay, he's doing his attack where he does 2 swings, one with each paw, and then like he like bites at you. So that's the one where you dodge back once, and then you wait a second, then you dodge back again, and then you dodge to the right for the last attack. I did this fight so much and took so much time to learn it, because I remember this was one of the very first bosses that I got to, and I died over and over again, and I sat down and I was like, okay, I need to think about this. I need to figure out, like, there were certain attacks I didn't know how to dodge, and so every single attempt I was experimenting. Do I dodge back? Do I dodge to the left? And I kind of just like put it all into my head. And by the time I finally got to the boss, when I knew all this stuff, I was like, okay, now I really try. And it's so hard to explain how satisfying it is, because you are facing off against this giant dragon. You can do like 1 or 2 attacks to punish at a time, and the boss fight will take forever. But all of the attacks that are going on are like, what they are. You see them, you see just the first 1/10 of a second of the animation, and you're like, okay, I dodge in 2.2 seconds, 3.3 seconds, and 5.2 seconds. So like, I'm just counting in my head, like, okay, dodge right now, and dodge right now. You really have to be patient with the fight, and you cannot, the boss fight, you do less damage if you're not hitting his head, so you have to get the right hitbox, which means you cannot attack unless it's your right moment for it, in which case it's even more like a dance, because it's like the boss is leading, you need to wait your turn for when it's your turn to do your attack. So I took so much time to learn every single one of these attacks and know how to time them as perfectly as possible. And because of that, it's my favorite fight. And it's just very satisfying. And I think it's because it's so fair. All of its hitboxes are like so perfectly crisp. And the boss fight itself is like, it's really, really satisfying to do. You always
listening.
What was that?
Sorry. Listening to that, would you say your background as a musician would have helped you with this?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's definitely, as a musician, especially as a percussionist, so I'm like super into rhythm. I think being a musician helps Midir be such a fascinating and like fun fight, because you are going along with some music, and like even if you're not going along with the actual music that's playing, you're going along with the boss's music that he's doing. He's doing, you know, tap, swipe, and you're like, okay, so I dodge, wait, dodge. So yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. You pick up a lot on the like timing of it with music.
Yeah, because I would say timing for me is probably one of the most difficult things to learn in a game like this, and that's why I struggle.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne are super focused on the timing the dodges. Dark Souls 1 also is kind of as well, but it's also very much like a use a shield, and a shield will help you with a lot of these. But yeah, that's like that's I think where like one of the biggest differences between how you and I play games is like I like a lot of the like precise timing things, of like, you know, okay, this I have to wait until this perfect moment, and then I do it, and like that's where I get my satisfaction while I'm playing a game.
And I would say for me it's a lot more planning ahead before the fight.
Yeah.
Because I'm not very good at doing the precise timing stuff like that.
Well, and that is a very fascinating thing, because that's like the planning ahead is so useful in so many games, and even in Dark Souls it's really useful to plan ahead with all of them. Like for me, I love flying by the seat of my pants and being like, okay, I have all of these attacks, I'm just going to wait for them to happen and then react accordingly. So it's a very fascinating thing. Like we play games quite differently, and so something like that is like something like Dark Souls would be a very different experience for you versus for me. So Gale is also a fight. I love the fight. There's not a whole lot to talk about with it other than just it's an awesome fight, but it is also a very long one, and it's similar to Midir, where you kind of have to learn the attacks and everything, and learn when you can actually dodge and when you can't. So again, all of the bosses and most of the bosses in Dark Souls 3 are great. There are a few that I hate, like Crystal Sage, Curse-Ratted Greatwood, High Lord Wolnir, Ancient Wyvern. I think those are like the four that I just despise. And I don't like Aldrich, I guess. That one's like fine, but I just hate the arrow attack. But otherwise, it's really like all the bosses are great in their own regard, and they all have their own way in which you need to be like patient and sort of take your time with it. You cannot, for a single one of these bosses, whether it's in Dark Souls 1 or 3 or even in Dark Souls 2, you cannot just brute force your way through unless you have like ridiculous amounts of armor, unless you're over prepared. But especially in Dark Souls 3 and especially the later bosses, you very much need to be patient with them, and so you're going to die many times on your first time through. I don't know if there's a single boss in Dark Souls 3 and like the second half of the game that I ended up one-shotting. Like I don't like, other than, like, I guess Yorm I one-shot, but like I didn't one-shot Aldrich, I didn't one-shot Pontiff Sullivan, I didn't one-shot Dragonslayer Armor or the Twin Princes. You know, any of the DLC ones I didn't one-shot. I didn't one-shot Ancient Wyvern because that fight sucks. And Nameless King I didn't, and the last boss I did. Like all of them, they take many attempts to learn, because you end up thinking that you can punish because you're like, when, you know, and it's hard when it's your first time through. It's kind of hard to know exactly when you can and can't punish, but you also still end up getting a little impatient about it, and you're like, hey, I can fight with this, it's no problem. But you can't. So it's a very fun game, but it's a game that you cannot brute force, and because of that, a lot of people don't like to play it multiple times, because it's like, oh, it's all this having to take it slow whenever I play it again. Whereas for a lot of other games, you know, like you might want to go fast when you're playing a game again. For me, I love that you are still never safe. Now, granted, when you've played it a bunch, it gets easier. I will very regularly do playthroughs of the game where I don't die to a single boss, but it still is like I still like I'm not just going in and just being like, okay, just hit the attack buttons. What do I care? Just keep attacking. Like, no, if you do that, you're gonna die. But all of that being said, that is what leads to the game's success in my eyes, is that it's very satisfying. When you fight a boss in Dark Souls 1 or 3, or 2, or Bloodborne, or Sekiro, or Elden Ring, yeah, coming up soon, victory is never guaranteed. And so because of that, you are always working for the victory. You're never just like, I don't care anymore, I'm just gonna sit still and just keep attacking. I mean, if you do that, you're pretty much guaranteed gonna die. So you have to really like focus on the fight and pay attention to it. And so because of that, victory on every single boss fight, even the very first ones, feels satisfying. When you get to see that victory achieved pop up on the screen, you know it means you actually did achieve something. It's not like a game stroking your ego being like, wow. It's not like the World of Warcraft recently, for the either this expansion or the previous expansion, added in a starter zone where it's like, okay, this way we can really get people into the game, and you're level 1 and you fight against, it's like, oh, you're on this boat and they're training you how to fight, and so you fight this soldier who's like a trained soldier of the Alliance or the Horde, and you like just auto attack them until they fall over, and they're like, I submit to your superior strength, and it's like, what?
Wow, I did it.
Yeah, hooray for me. I right clicked one time. And in this game, like any of your victories, you are working hard at them. You have to sit down and think about what is going on. How does this fight work? Why am I always dying to this? Mid-year is like the perfect example of that, where you have to take so long to really think about what's going on, because if you don't, the boss can one-shot you at a high level and two-shot you at the highest level. When you do New Game Plus, it is a one-shot no matter what. Like, no matter what you're wearing, it's a one-shot if you mess up certain moves. And the boss fight can take forever, but like, because you have to really take your time and learn what's going on and take it slow, that makes the boss fight so satisfying. Especially when you complete it and you're like, wow, I just like learned an entire dance, you know? That's what it feels like. I will regularly do no hits of mid-year, and the mid-year is the fight I look forward to the most on any of my challenge runs, and my fist only run is no exception. I'm so looking forward to mid-year, but like, I like it so much that I did a pyromancy only run, which so pyromancy is you get mainly fire attacks, fire spells, and you get a few dark spells, and you get one physical spell, and it's called Boulder Heave, and you kind of go like, and you spit out this boulder, and it takes like 2 seconds. Like, it's a super long cast time, and it does barely any damage, but it does physical damage, whereas regular pyromancies do fire damage, and then the dark ones do dark damage. The issue is mid-year is highly resistant to fire and dark, to the point where you would not have enough mana at all to be able to defeat him with pyromancy, like with fire or dark attacks. However, if you do physical attacks, like, he's not resistant to physical attacks, so if you do this Boulder Heave, which takes like 2 seconds every single cast, you can do it. And so now it's even more so, you have to wait for the perfect moment. Sometimes you won't even hit him, because you'll do like this attack and then he'll move his head around. The fight takes like 20 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
All right, mid-year, if you'll just stand still.
Yeah, just stay right there for one moment. Oh, you moved. So, all of the Dark Souls games, when you know the fight, when you've actually like learned the fight, they're not going to take more than 5 minutes in a regular run. Most often, they'll take like 2 minutes. You know, Ornstein and Smo might take like the full 5. Mid-year or Gale or Sister Freed might take like 5 minutes, because they're long fights, and because they're very punishing if you get too greedy. But all the rest of the fights, they're not going to take a super long time. So it's not like a Sylvanas Mythic in World of Warcraft. Sorry, Joe, I keep making references to World of Warcraft stuff. But, you know, it's not like that where it's like, oh, 14 and a half minutes in, one person made a mistake and the fight's over and you got to start over. It's not like in Destiny, in like a Nightfall, where you'll go through for 40 minutes and then you'll end up making a slight mistake and die, and then it's all over. If you're doing challenge runs,
not like that anymore.
That's true. Yeah. Now you can just respawn and be like, whatever. Except for in the Grandmaster, then they do kick you out.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird. Like Destiny has gone from being like the Nightfall is if you all die, it kicks you out, to oh, now you have to do it in a time limit, to oh, now it's just a really difficult strike, and then back to oh, now it kicks you out if you all die. Like they can't make up their mind. But yeah, so because of that, it's not like you have to sit there and perform for a ridiculously long amount of time if it's your, you know, first time playing or your 10th time playing. But because of that, that means that it's extra satisfying when you beat a boss, because it's like, okay, I didn't have to, like, you know, I didn't have to make a study guide. I didn't have to read a book. I didn't have to analyze my own videos of the fight or anything. But you still have to think about it, and you have to really take your time and be like, okay, how do I do this? How do I actually learn this fight?
I like the idea of streamers like having a theater where they're projecting a film of the fight.
Yeah, they like sell out a theater and everyone's like there watching, and they're like, wait, go back. Oh, that's how you messed that dodge up. Oh. So to wrap all of this up, what are, as you know, we very much like to end these with talking about lessons about game design and talking about, okay, so what is there to take away from all of this, from what we've talked about and from Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 in particular. If you are interested in game design, if you're interested in making a game of any variety, whether it's making a level in Mario Maker, or if it's making a Halo Reach custom map, or if it's making a map in Trials Fusion, like who cares? Whatever it is you're making, these are sort of like ideas for game design to be taking away from this. And the primary one from Dark Souls 1 and 3 and their success is do not be afraid to make things difficult. And as a player, don't be afraid of difficult things. Something being difficult can lead to frustration, and it can lead to people putting away a game for a while. It can lead to the old famous rage quit. It can lead to a controller being thrown. It can lead to a quarter-sized indentation being made in your wall. Not like I would know anything about that, but it can lead to a lot of frustration. But other times it leads to elation when you complete the challenge. It leads to this feeling of happiness and of like strength and power when you beat a boss, when you complete whatever challenge it is. When you have taken the time to really figure out what it is that you need to do and you've overcome the challenge. I mean, I think about even in like Terraria, fighting against the final boss, against Moonlord. I took so long to defeat that boss on my first time, and I still don't like how long it takes in order to be able to summon him again. You know, oftentimes like 30 minutes worth of grinding in order to resummon him. But the fight itself is really, really fun because you have to take the time to learn what's going on, and the fight is unbelievably fair. Like there's no unavoidable attacks. You're never going to take unavoidable damage. But if you just kind of try and brute force it, you're going to get hit by all of these things and die. So you have to really take the time and learn it. And then because of that, when you beat that and you finish the game and you see the credits and you get these powerful weapons and you get like you just get the knowledge that like, hey, I just beat this boss, this really difficult boss. I actually did it on my own. It leads to a huge amount of like really good feelings.
I did it. Now it's time to fight Empress of Light in the daytime.
Yeah, and every attack one-shots. Oh, and it's miserable. Never mind. So the important thing is that difficulty has to be fair. You'll notice when I talked about Moonlord there, I had said specifically everything is avoidable. When I talk about any of the Dark Souls 1 or 3 bosses, and I don't talk about Dark Souls 2 bosses because a lot of those ones are not very good, but in Dark Souls 1 and 3, all of these bosses, you can avoid every single hit. In some bosses, that's like one of the only ways to beat the boss is to avoid everything that they do. But even then, like, you can avoid everything. And so because of that, defeating them ends up feeling great because you're like, hey, I just like dodged all of these things. And a lot of times you're gonna get hit. I mean, like, it's in Dark Souls, you have limited Estus, and so if you run out of Estus, then you're kind of in trouble, and then you can't mess up dodges anymore, otherwise you're going to be dying. But like a boss fight that's going to last a short while with a short amount of heals is really, really fun. But like, if you have like a boss fight that is guaranteed they're going to hit you a bunch of times over a certain amount of time, and you have limited heals, so it's just a sprint, where it's like, okay, if I don't beat this boss in 5 minutes, then they just kill me, which is, a lot of people know that as the enrage timer. That's a very popular thing in a lot of MMORPGs. Doing that is really, really unsatisfying. And the important thing is it leads to a lack of creativity in players. They're not able to go back through and play it again with some sort of challenge, and they're not allowed to experiment in the fight. They just need to learn the one strategy and just keep doing that until they stop making mistakes. Sprint fights are not very satisfying to complete, but endurance fights, or just, like long, satisfying fights where you can do it without getting hit, are the most satisfying, and they lead to a lot of replayability, and again, they lead to allowing creativity for players to actually play the game how they want. You don't have to do a whole lot of changes to a game when you make the boss fights or the challenges or anything something where the player can do it their way. They still have to play in accordance to the game. They have to dodge the attacks, but they don't have to do it in one very specific way all the time, and then if they stray at all from the path, like high-end mythic raiding from World of Warcraft, or like a lot of world first fights for a lot of like, a lot of MMOs, or even like Destiny fights where you have to play it one very specific way. That's not fun to do, because, I mean, for some people that is kind of fun, but for the most part, it makes replaying it near impossible because there's like nothing to be gained from replaying it other than just do it again. Can you beat Dark Souls without getting hit? Yes. It's really tough. There's a lot of people that will do hitless runs or do like if I get hit, I restart.
I would imagine getting hit by ads is pretty unavoidable in most situations.
Yeah, it is technically still very possible throughout all of the games to do it without getting hit, but the longer you go, the exponentially harder it gets. That's like there's a streamer, the Happy Hob, who did Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 in a row, just beating the game, not doing all the bosses, but just beating the game, like killing the final boss, like, starting from scratch, killing all the required bosses into the final boss without taking a single hit at all. And it took him years to do, and he finally ended up doing it 2 years ago or so. And it was like, he was like crying because he's like been working at it for so long, and I don't blame him. Like, it's crazy. BFA Mythic Plus felt like that with our group. Yeah, exactly. It's when you don't have to follow a very rigid, very like specific path, it feels so fun. But on the other side, and this is kind of like connecting to to the way that you play games, Joe. Planning ahead is also really satisfying, and that is also involved in this, and that was also involved in the BFA Mythic Plus. That's where it's like, if you have to always fly on the seat of your pants, then it's not as fun because it's just chaotic. But going in with a plan and being like, this is what we want to do, and still you can choose how you do the plan. You don't have to be like, okay, the game wants us to play it this way, so we have to do it that way. It's like, no, we can do it in this way. We can do it the way that we want to do it. Take some time like for yourself and figure out how to beat the game, how to beat the boss, and then go through and be like, if this situation happens, this is how I'll react, and if this situation happens, this is how I'll react. And that leads to a completely different and, again, way more satisfying experience than if you had to go on a very specific plan. So that is all of Dark Souls 1 and 3. That's like the important stuff I want to talk about. And I wanted to nerd out about the games because they're very, very fun and they're my favorite games of all time.
Thunderous applause.
Thank you very much. Singular clap. So I'll turn over the floor to you if there's anything you want to say about it, any questions, anything that you want to say about it, Mr. Joe.
Well, I don't have anything in particular about Dark Souls that I have to say, but it just made me think, that last little section about the golden age of Dado Does Destiny, and how after Destiny became a bit more rigid, it sort of lost a lot of the fun that could be had.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, yeah, I mean, I know that's
quite a non sequitur.
Oh no, I mean, that is actually a very good point, and it's like that's a perfect example for the lessons in game design that I had talked about at the end there. That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Like doing Crota with just the three of us, or two of us, doing Vault of Glass with just the three of us. All of that stuff was not at all how the game intended, and it was always something where it was like we went in with a plan. We knew this was how we were going to react to things, but we didn't do all this math and be like, okay, we have to move at this spot at exactly 13.5 seconds into the fight. It was just like, okay, this is kind of what we want to do, and this is kind of how we want to play it. Nowadays, a lot of the fights are very like sterile and very computerized, you know? It's like, okay, this is exactly how you play it, and you have to do it in this exact way, otherwise you're gonna die, you're gonna fail, whatever. Like you said, it became very rigid.
Yeah. I always think of doing Crota with Last Word as they did.
Oh yeah, all the challenges for Crota. Well, and that's the thing to me that I like the most about a lot of games. I mean, that's, you know, you and I used to do challenge games in Call of Duty, zombies, all the time. We would do starter room only, shotguns only, wonder weapons only, whatever. We don't do that anymore because it's just it's so flavorless now, you know? You don't go into a game and be like, okay, I can do the starting room weapons and all that, because it's like that starting room weapon will become more powerful than anything. It'll be as powerful as any other weapon that exists in the game. So like, there's no challenge, there's no satisfaction from it. Even if you weren't getting anything out of it. And like in Destiny, you would have the Last Word challenge, or the blind run challenge, where Dado he was blinded the entire time, or the Hodor challenge, where they could only communicate by saying Hodor. Like, I love the like special challenge things. I love the flavor, the just, okay, this is the thing that they gave you, now let's mess up everything and see if we can still beat it like that. And that's, Dark Souls gets a lot of challenge runs. I mean, you know, I'm doing my fists only run. I've done pyromancy only and sorceries only. I've done the broken straight sword only, which is like a step in between a normal playthrough and fists only. I've done, like, you know, people do soul level 1 runs where they don't level at all.
God.
Yeah, there was oh man, I saw someone do a soul level 1 fists only new game +7, which is like the hardest, like that's like everything has the most possible health. It was against like the final boss. It took them 3 hours, but that's nothing compared to very recently, as in within the last like week or so, someone did a broken weapon that they do not meet the stats for against Dark Eater Meteor on New Game +7. What that means is, for one, they could be one shot at like almost any time. For two, that means they were only doing like 2 damage a hit. And for three, New Game +7 Meteor has like 20,000 health. Maybe even more than that. I don't actually remember, but a ridiculously high amount. This fight, this is not an exaggeration. This fight took the person 18 hours in a row to complete.
And that was a successful run.
Yes, he also talked about 4 previous runs that were not successful. One of them where he fell asleep in the middle of the attempt. Like, it's insane to me, the dedication some people have, but I love that those runs can be done. Oh yeah, like a bad run or bad weapon you can use. Yeah, so like the broken straight sword is the most common bad weapon run, but you can also just do fists only. In Dark Souls 1, fists only is ridiculously difficult unless you do this glitch called tumble buffing, where you end up actually making your fists do like you glitch the game so that your fists end up doing like 400 damage per hit, which is like more than a lot of weapons. So it's a little weird, but it's a pretty silly glitch. But yeah, like the fist only run is what I'm doing right now when I'm like halfway, 2/3 of the way through. But it's a very fun game, especially Dark Souls 3, but all of them are very fun to do low damage runs for, because you really have to learn the fights. Especially like one fight that I hadn't mentioned earlier is the Deacons of the Deep, which is a fight where when you're fighting them, if you take a long time, they will start to curse you, and there's like it's one of the only fights that feels like an MMO fight, because you're actually like going around the room and you have to take out certain enemies at certain times, and then go back to fighting the boss, and then take out some enemies after like a minute. Some more pop up and you have to take them down. And if you don't take them down, they'll curse you, which will instantly one-shot you and kill you and end the fight. But if you don't have enough damage to brute force your way through and to kill the boss, then you have to go through and like kill all these guys, and so the fight takes forever. But it's really, really satisfying when you get it done, because you're like, wow, I just multitasked the crap out of that fight. So it's fun. I love challenge runs in like any game. But you know, like I said, Joe, I miss back during like Black Ops 1 and 2 when we would do like starting room only challenges, and zombies would take like an entire gun's worth of ammo to kill.
And we did pistols only, and we got to a higher round than we ever got to before.
Yeah, somehow our pistols only run was the best one we'd ever done. But I think we had done that one on Ascension, and also allowed PhD Flopper, which is like so helpful.
Too easy.
Yes. So anyways, if you have anything else, Joe, you may say it. For anyone in chat, if there's Thorn and Old or anyone else that's watching, if you have any sort of stuff, any questions or statements you want to make about Dark Souls or game design or anything, now is the time.
Well, if we're wrapping up here, before I get off, because I will be... Wow, that sucks.
Wow, sucks.
Okay. I will not be joining for your game stream. I just say, come back next week.
That's
when
right.
I talk about when I decide to be the Fallout guy, I guess, and I talk about Fallout 4.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that one.
My theme is Fallout 4, Far Harbor, the DLC that gets my personal award for DLC that most improved on the base game.
Oh, nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking quite a bit about, actually. So
Nice. Fallout is great. Yeah, I never got into the Fallout series, but like last podcast talk show, Joe talked about Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout 4 is one I actually have a little bit of experience with, not a ton, because I've played through like the first hour a few times, but I'm looking forward to you talking about that, Joe. Oh yeah, with mods even better.
Far Harbor is a great atmosphere.
So
yeah, I have a bit to say about that.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that. And one other thing, tomorrow is Joe's birthday, so everyone say happy birthday, Joe.
Oh, you just doxed me.
Oh no. Now people will do the research and find out exactly who you are. Old World Blues is your favorite?
Old World Blues is pretty good. I have never played it personally, but I have watched a few playthroughs. I do have to get Fallout New Vegas DLC myself.
I didn't even know that game had a DLC.
Narrowing it down. There's only 3 of us.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you once again for joining for this podcast talk show.
Thank you for choosing me as second host.
Oh, no problem.
I've been enjoying it myself. I hope everyone else has.
Yeah, this was a really good time. So, and thank you for allowing me to nerd out about Dark Souls, a series which I am very fond of.
Seems only fair after my episode last week.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun one, talking about Fallout.